Stop asking the universe for things. That is the first mistake, and it is the one nobody corrects you on, because everyone around you is making the same mistake at the same time. Jose Silva spent decades studying why certain people get results and most people do not. Not the results of luck, not the results of timing. The results that appear to come from nowhere, the opportunity that arrives the week you stop begging for it, the solution that surfaces the morning after you finally stop forcing it. He found a door, a specific, repeatable, technical door. And the reason most people never walk through it is not lack of effort, it is not lack of belief. It is that they are operating at the wrong frequency, and no one ever told them that frequency is something you can control. What follows is not inspiration, it is instruction. There is a difference. Pay attention to that difference. Your brain is not one thing operating at one speed. It has gears, four of them. And the gear you're in right now, the one you have been in for most of your waking life, is the wrong one for programming anything. The first gear is beta. This is where you live. High frequency, fast, analytical, alert. It is the gear of deadlines and traffic and checking your phone. Beta is excellent for solving problems that already exist in front of you. It is completely useless for creating conditions that do not yet exist. When you sit down in beta and try to visualize what you want, you are trying to write new instructions onto a hard drive that is spinning at full speed with every competing file already open. The data does not land. It cannot land. The second gear is alpha, 10 cycles per second. This is where the mind becomes trainable. This is where suggestion takes root, where intention becomes instruction rather than wish. Silva called this the alpha level, not poetically, but technically. He studied this in his own laboratory work and found that at alpha, the mind stops filtering input the way it does at beta and starts absorbing it. The wall between conscious intention and subconscious execution drops. Theta comes next. This is deeper, the hypnagogic state, the edge of sleep, and delta is sleep itself, dreamless and slow. You do not need theta or delta for what Silva taught. You need alpha. Here is the problem. Most people attempting visualization, affirmations, or any form of mental programming do it in beta, wide awake, fully alert, sitting at their desk, or lying in bed staring at the ceiling while the mind is still running yesterday's arguments and tomorrow's errands. They repeat phrases, they try to generate emotion, they try harder when it does not work. None of that matters if the frequency is wrong. Not because effort is valueless, but because effort is a beta activity. The subconscious mind does not respond to effort. It does not respond to emotional intensity. It does not respond to how many times you repeated something. It responds to the frequency at which the instruction was delivered. I remember the first time I understood this clearly, not as an idea, but as a felt shift. I had been attempting to change a specific recurring pattern in my life for close to 2 years. Not passively, actively. I read, I wrote, I repeated, and the pattern kept returning. What changed everything was not a new belief or a new strategy. It was learning to access a different state before attempting to change anything. The same intention that had failed for 2 years began producing results within weeks. The intention had not changed. The frequency had. This is what Silva discovered working alone, testing on himself and then on others. He was not a neuroscientist. He did not have a laboratory in the academic sense. He was a man who repaired radios and televisions and who understood that every device operates correctly only within a specific frequency range. He applied that logic to the human mind and spent years testing whether it held. It did. The implications are precise. If you have tried any form of mental programming and it did not work, there are two possible explanations. Either the technique was structurally flawed, or you were executing a valid technique at the wrong frequency. Silva's position, and one I find consistently supported by direct observation, is that most people fall into the second category. The technique was not broken. The state was wrong. This is important to sit with before moving forward. Because the instinct, when something does not work, is to look for a better technique, a stronger method, a more sophisticated approach. Sometimes that is correct, but often you are solving the wrong problem. You are upgrading the message while leaving the wrong transmission channel open. Silva gave a precise method for reaching alpha intentionally, not through years of meditation practice, not through pharmaceutical assistance, through a simple, repeatable countdown that conditions the nervous system to drop into the target state on command. That method is what comes next. The countdown is not a ritual, it is not symbolic. It is a conditioning sequence. Here's the mechanism. The brain responds to expectation. When you repeat a specific sequence, the same physical cues, the same numeric descent under relaxed conditions, the nervous system begins to associate that sequence with the corresponding state. Over time, the sequence becomes a trigger. The counting becomes the door, and your brain walks through it because you have trained it to. Silva's base method. Sit or lie comfortably. Close your eyes. Begin counting backward from 100 to 1. Slowly, one number with each exhale. Do not try to relax. Do not try to feel anything in particular. Do not try to empty your mind. Simply count and allow the body to do what the body already knows how to do when it is not being interfered with. That last part is critical. Do not interfere. Most people, the first time they attempt this, spend the entire descent fighting their own thoughts. They count to 87. Notice they are thinking about something unrelated. Treat this as failure. Try to force mental silence and then either fall asleep or give up. That is not failure. That is beta behavior, trying to manage a state change process that does not require management. The thoughts are not the obstacle. Trying to stop the thoughts is the obstacle. After several days of practice with 100 to 1 count, Silva prescribes shortening the sequence, 50 to 1, then 10 to 1. The brain, once conditioned, begins to reach alpha faster. Eventually, a count of 5 to 1 is sufficient. This is not a shortcut, it is what conditioning produces. A shortened sequence that works only because the longer sequence built the pathway first. Now, what do you do once you are at the level? This is where most instruction becomes vague and most results collapse. People are taught to visualize what they want, to feel it, to believe it. These are incomplete instructions. Not false, but incomplete in a way that produces failure. Silva was specific. At the alpha level, you do not visualize a desire, you visualize a condition that has already resolved. Not the wanting of something, the having of it, not the door you want to open, the room you are already standing in. There is a technical reason for this. The subconscious mind does not process tense the way the conscious mind does. When you visualize wanting something, the wanting is what you are programming. The subconscious registers the emotional structure of the scene, not the intellectual content you intend. A scene of wanting produces more wanting. A scene of having produces the conditions that match having. Silva also taught a screen technique, a mental projection surface placed slightly above eye level in the visual field behind the closed eyes. This is not decoration. Placing the mental image above the horizontal line of sight is associated with constructive, future-oriented processing in the brain's visual cortex. The detail is small, the effect is not. On that screen, you place a single scene, not a slideshow, not a highlight reel. One scene, a specific moment that could only occur if the condition you are programming had already been established. If the scene requires your goal to be real, the brain begins organizing toward the conditions that would make the scene possible. I tested this on something specific, a professional outcome I had been trying to force through effort alone for months. I stopped the effort. I used this method once per day for 11 days. On the 12th day, I received an unexpected contact that moved the situation forward without any action on my part. I am not offering this as proof of anything supernatural. I am telling you that this was my direct experience, and it matched precisely what Silva described would happen when the frequency and the technique aligned. One warning. And it is the one that breaks most people's results, even when they execute the method correctly. After you come out of the alpha state, do not undo the programming with your regular daily commentary. You spend 15 minutes at the level building a coherent signal, then spend 6 waking hours narrating everything that contradicts it. You look at your bank account and feel lack. You replay the obstacle in your mind. You tell someone about the problem in detail. Every one of those actions is a counter instruction delivered at beta frequency, which does land, because the subconscious records beta input constantly, whether you intend it to or not. Silva called the waking state a recording device. It never stops recording. The difference is only in what lands deeply versus what lands superficially. Alpha instructions land deep. Beta instructions land constantly and shallowly. If you flood the system with enough shallow counter programming, you erode the deep instruction. Protect the signal. What you do at the level matters. What you do after the level also matters. There is a reason this channel keeps returning to Silva. In the video we published on José Silva, Do This for 90 seconds before sleep and reality starts, Bending, one viewer left a comment that stuck with me. They wrote, "While the info is on point, hearing AI talking about José using his voice is weird. I understand that reaction, but I want to say something directly about it. The reason we return to Silva is not because his name draws attention. It is because his framework is one of the few in this entire space that is structurally honest. He did not sell hope. He sold a mechanism, and mechanisms either work or they do not. The testing is available to anyone. With that said, here is the part of Silva's system that almost never gets taught in the short form version. The part that determines whether the technique produces results or produces nothing. Coherence. Not belief in the sense that word is usually used. Not positivity. Not faith. Coherence, the alignment between what you are programming at the alpha level and what your deeper signal is actually broadcasting. Ask yourself this honestly. When you visualize the condition you want, when you place it on the screen, when you hold the result seen, does any part of you immediately offer a counter argument? A small interior voice that says that is not realistic, or you do not deserve that, or even if it happened, it would not last. If there is hesitation, that hesitation is not just psychological noise. It is a split in the signal. You are transmitting two things simultaneously. One is the programmed intention. The other is the older, more deeply installed counter-belief. And the subconscious, which does not take sides, which simply executes whatever has more repetition and more emotional charge behind it, will execute the louder of the two. This is not a reason to panic or to conclude that your counter beliefs disqualify you. It is a diagnostic, a precise one. The question is not whether you believe the outcome is possible in theory. The question is whether the version of yourself that you are being while you live your daily life is consistent with the version of yourself that would have that outcome. Because the subconscious is not listening to what you say you want. It is reading the ongoing behavior, the habitual emotional posture, the story you quietly tell yourself every morning before the day begins. Silva addressed this directly. He called it working on yourself from the inside, not affirmations, not willpower applied to behavior. A genuine update to the self-concept, the internal model of who you are and what is appropriate for you to have. Until that model updates, the programming at alpha runs into the older model and loses. Here is how this becomes practical. Before you use the countdown, before you place anything on the screen, spend 60 seconds asking one question, not to anyone external, to yourself. The question is there any version of me that believes this outcome is wrong for me to have? If the answer is yes, even quietly, even half-formed, that needs to be the first thing you address at the level, not the goal. The interference. You use the same technique, the same screen, the same resolved scene structure, but you apply it to the counter-belief itself. You visualize a version of yourself for whom having the thing is obvious, not a strained fantasy, a quiet normality, the person who simply does not carry the old objection anymore. This is the work that cannot be skipped. And it is the work that most video content, most courses, most weekend seminars skip entirely because it is slower, less dramatic, and less satisfying to teach than the technique itself. I have observed this consistently in my own practice and in watching others apply these methods. The people who get durable results are not the people who execute the technique most precisely. They are the people who took coherence seriously, who went back and dealt with the interference before expecting the signal to land clean. My name is José, and I have spent years working with these methods, not as an academic study, but as a direct practice. I am telling you this because I want to be transparent about where this comes from. It comes from use, from failure followed by adjustment, followed by results that could not reasonably be attributed to coincidence. The alpha door is real. It is repeatable. It is technical, not mystical. But a door requires two things, something that opens it and someone ready to walk through. If you have been executing the technique and seeing no results, the frequency question is the first thing to check. The coherence question is the second. In most cases, the answer is in one of those two places. Not in finding a better method, not in trying harder. Start the countdown tonight, 100 to 1, no effort, no forcing. Simply descend and place one clear, resolved scene on the screen above the line of sight. Then come out and protect what you built. Do not narrate the problem for the rest of the day. Do not rehearse the obstacle. Let the signal transmit without interference. Do this for 10 consecutive nights. Then observe. Reality does not negotiate. It responds. And when the signal is coherent and the frequency is right, it has no choice.